It's my proud privilege to welcome on this platform Rukmini Walker. Rukmini, a very warm welcome to you. Welcome to this platform, and we're going to talk about balancing the feminine and masculine energy. And do you see uh, any kind of difference between the two?
Thank you so much for welcoming me so kindly. Let me begin with a few prayers to my Srila Prabhupada. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. Thank you so much for welcoming me so lovingly. And while you were speaking, I was thinking actually of two other animals, the honeybee and the fly. And we all have a tendency in material consciousness to be like that fly, to go wherever there's something dirty or something unclean or something negative. But the Bhakti Shastras advise us to be like the honeybee, to always find the essence and find the nectar and find the good qualities in a place, or try to uplift a person or a place, wherever we may be. So that's what I was thinking. So you asked a question, but I missed the question.
I was wondering about the topic for the day. We're going to talk about the masculine and the feminine energy and coming together of both, balancing. Do you see a world where we really need to do that? Is there a lot of conflict between the two? How do you perceive the situation as of now?
I think in the competitive material world, or material consciousness, material thinking, whether we're men or women, the standards of empowerment tend to be based on what we kind of stereotypically think of as male, based on achieving and climbing the corporate ladder and smashing the glass ceilings. But in a consciousness of bhakti, bhakti is a process that, rather than achieving, it's a descending process. And in the bhakti consciousness, both men and women seek spiritual empowerment. And in spiritual consciousness, it's more a matter of bending down to uplift others. Because in that kind of consciousness and that kind of balance, I see that what's good for me is also good for the world. So when I can uplift my own consciousness emotionally, mentally, spiritually, in all ways, physically, then I have the chance to also uplift the others who are around me, my family, my community. And it reverberates. Actually, once when I was a very young devotee, I heard Srila Prabhupada give a beautiful example that if you throw a pebble into the center of a pond, then so many circles will radiate out from that center harmoniously. And I think this word harmony is a great key, to be in balance, to be in harmony. And with that center, if I'm centered on the center of existence, the source of all existence, then I can have family and community and humanitarianism and care for the environment. And all of these things will be in balance. But if I take my pebble and throw it here to the side, and you throw yours over here, then so many interference patterns will clash. So all living beings come from that divine center, and we should have that respect. I was thinking, this is the time of the goddess. And I was thinking this morning, actually, the goddess that we should be honoring most of all during these days of Navaratri is the goddess of the earth. We're all her children, and we're all just like babies. And she's given us a foundation, and we need to honor the earth and all living beings who come from the earth, the trees, the animals, all living beings of every color, of every community. So I think this is a beautiful meditation during this Navaratri time also. And balance. I think what we're talking about is balance. I think also, we might say, well, how can I balance if these waves of material life are always hitting me and always throwing me off kilter? Well, to be rooted in a foundation of practice, of bhakti practice, our own personal sadhana, keeping friendship with like-minded people, sadhu sangha, to study the holy books, the Bhagavad Gita, the Srimad Bhagavatam, Svadhyaya, and then to be impelled to seva. What can I do to help the world? How can I act in compassion for the world? And then the result of all these things that start with an S is this sadachar, this foundation of virtue that we can carry out into the world and inspire others, be inspired ourselves and inspire others through our virtuous foundation of sadachar.
What words of wisdom and how profound, Rukmini. You spoke about sadachar, swadhyay, and satsang. But when I look at the world around, I find women and girls leading a very stereotyped existence. Very little time for spirituality or the scriptures. And all of us are in a mad rush. But you decided to travel on this less traveled path, if I may say so. I'm reminded of Robert Frost's poem, The Road Not Taken. I just want to know, how did you come about to be such an exponent of the Bhakti Yoga? And how did this meeting with Srila Prabhupada come about? And yes,
Thank you.
how and why are you here?
Thank you. Thank you. So I had the good fortune to meet Srila Prabhupada when I was only 16 years old. And that time was a time of upheaval in the US. The young people, we were looking for answers, and we were looking for something deeper than the values we'd been handed down from our society and from our parents. There was an incomprehensible war on Vietnam that made no sense to us. Our brothers and sisters and friends were being sent to a war that had no meaning for us to kill or be killed. So it was a time of great upheaval. And somehow you could say perhaps by destiny, or perhaps you could say by Krishna's grace, somehow Prabhupada as a humble Indian sadhu, a penniless, humble Indian sadhu, landed right in New York City in the midst of this craziness and chaos. There were demonstrations, and really we were seeking revolution. And Srila Prabhupada brought a revolution in consciousness that shifted our whole way of thinking and shifted our values. As a matter of fact, I was telling someone yesterday that my father, just before he passed away, my father was from New York, and just before he passed away, he expressed a beautiful appreciation of Srila Prabhupada. He said, Prabhupada was able to gather these young people who wouldn't accept any authority and wouldn't accept any wisdom from anyone. And somehow he was able to capture our hearts and give us values that were uplifting to ourselves and to society. So it was so beautiful. My father said Prabhupada came to the very neighborhood where he used to go and hang out with his friends in New York. So somehow by destiny, by Krishna's great mercy, the places where the greatest need, the biggest graces was given. So there was such a need there. There was such a rebellion. And so he uplifted us and gave us a whole new direction in life.
Oh yes, you've taken me to the journey home. And, I read about this counterculture movement, and I read about Radhanath Swami Maharaj, his young days, and the blues, and the hippies, and yearning to seek answers amidst all this chaos. Now, when Prabhupada was there, Srila Prabhupada was there, he must have seen so much of chaos. He must have seen young men and women of the Americans uh, leading an existence which was so tumultuous. How did he bring about a kind of harmony, a kind of bringing together of this set of youngsters? Did he ever speak to you about the feminine and the masculine energy and the harmonizing of everything around to get rid of the chaos?
Yes. You asked a few questions there, so let me try to answer. How was he able to do that? I think by his humility, by his unmistakable love for Krishna, a love that surpassed anything we'd ever seen in this world. By his kindness, he was so kind to each and every one of us. There was one story that one intoxicated girl actually broke into his room in San Francisco, and she was saying all kinds of crazy things. And he had to call the other disciples to get her to go out. And he made a comment. He said, "It is the darkest of darkness. It is the darkest of darkness." So he brought light to the darkest of darkness. And by his humor, he was funny. He was so human. He was so caring for each of us. I can share a couple of stories. When I was initiated, first I met his disciples in San Francisco, which was another seat of youth counterculture. And I came with those dear devotees to Montreal, Canada, where Prabhupada was a resident at that time. They were on their way to London to begin the London Temple, and they went on to meet the Beatles, to meet George Harrison, and to do extraordinary things. So I came with them, and when I met Srila Prabhupada, actually the first thing he said, which was so beautiful, they said, "This is Wendy. She's only 16 years old, and she wants to become your disciple." And Prabhupada had this tender look in his eyes, and he said, "But where are your parents?" So compassionate, thinking of the suffering of my parents actually at that time. And I was initiated a few days later. And when he initiated me, he told the story of Rukmini, which maybe you all know, the beautiful kidnapping of Rukmini. So he said, "You are a beautiful girl, and Krishna can accept any number of beautiful girls. So one day Krishna will kidnap you." And it was very charming. But then he also said, "So you are a beautiful girl, now become more beautiful within also." So I think this is a beautiful instruction. As women, we want to be beautiful. We recognize beauty in the world, but he gave a very deep instruction. First of all, he opened my heart to inject the medicine that you're a beautiful girl. Oh, I'm a beautiful girl. Okay, so now the reality, become beautiful within, more beautiful within also, he said. So that was a beautiful instruction. I'll share something else. You were asking about, did he ever say anything about the balance of male and female energies, masculine, feminine energies, which we see at the center of existence. We see, in Bhakti, we always worship Radha Krishna, Sita Ram, Lakshmi Narayan. This balance is there at the core, at the essence of existence. And always the respect is given first to Radha, first to Sita, first to Lakshmi Devi. So I want to share another story of Srila Prabhupada, that at one time I was in his room with a group of other disciples in his little apartment behind the storefront in New York. And he was looking deeply into each one of our eyes. And he looked from one to the next to the next. He said, "I want each one of you to open a temple somewhere." Amazing. He was sending his disciples to Japan, to South America, all over the world, unqualified people. Practically, we were teenagers. The old men and old women were maybe 20-something. I heard him say that. "I want each one of you to open a temple somewhere." So I was so young and impetuous, as I still am. And I said, even the girls, we called him Swamiji at that time. I said, even the girls, Swamiji? And he was smiling, he was laughing a bit. And he said, yes, even the girls. He said, there is no difference between the boys and the girls. When you're sharing Krishna consciousness, there is no difference between the boys and the girls. And then he began to speak about Janavi Devi, who was the wife of Nityananda Prabhu, and she was the acharya of the whole Gaudiya Sampradaya at that time. And all the Goswamis revered her and respected her. So that was a very beautiful thing. So to answer a little bit more in terms of our lives, I think women have a natural nurturing energy. They create the atmosphere in the home, a sacred atmosphere in the home. But there's also a courageous compassion that a woman can have when she stands up to protect herself from abuse or to protect her children. Then she becomes even more glorious. And in the same way, men, we expect our husbands to support the family. That's a given, right? But when a man can show some gentility and some vulnerability to also offer to help with the kids or pick up things or maybe sometimes cook, whatever, then he shows another side, a softer side. That's very beautiful. I was thinking, Arjuna is chastised by Lord Krishna, the great warrior, right? He's chastised by Lord Krishna that his compassion in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita is being misplaced, right? But Prabhupada also states in his explanations that because of the soft-heartedness of Arjuna, he was eligible to receive the instructions of Lord Krishna. So this is the quality of a devotee. Even in the great warrior Arjuna, we see the soft-heartedness of compassion. And then I was thinking of Draupadi. At the time when her 5 sons were killed by Ashvatthama, and Arjuna promised to bring the killer of her sons before her. So then he chased and he captured this Ashvatthama. And then when he brought Ashvatthama before Draupadi, ready to kill him, and Lord Krishna himself said, yes, kill him. He is an aggressor. Kill him. And Draupadi said, no, don't kill him, because then his mother will be crying the way I'm crying now. Don't kill him. So such strength of character. So how can, you mention the girls today, how can we find the strength of character? Are these just stories of the past that have no relevance to our lives? I don't think so. So you mentioned how we each have to just charge out every day to go to school or go to work. Of course, now we have a little bit of a respite during COVID, right? But I think it's a matter of putting the big pieces in first. To go to sleep starts the night before, right? Go to sleep early. Get up early before the world is awake, before the birds are even singing. Get up and do some sadhana. Do meditation on the holy name, chant the holy name, read the Svadhyaya, read from holy books. And this creates the foundation that gives us the values and the perspective when we do go out into the world, to be able to say no to greed, to be able to say no to those lower qualities. I was thinking of Ishopanishad that directs us that every being in this world, both the animate and the inanimate, comes from God, and everything comes from God, and we should not take more than what we need, not go to the place of greed. So all of these values come into our hearts by the study, the svadhyaya, the sadhana, the keeping a like-minded association of holy people. Put those big pieces in first.
I'm thinking, how women are, mothers are, they are the first teachers.
Yes.
They teach the child values in life. But somehow in India, a girl is a girl, a boy is a boy. and the twain shall never meet. There's a distinction. There's gender bias. I'm sure uh, such emotions, such biases are prevalent elsewhere as well. But I'm talking about my country here. And how do you think a woman as a mother can inculcate these values in her daughter or son and say, you are my daughter, you are a girl, yet you must have the courage. You could be the slayer of all evil like the goddess Durga. And she can tell her son that, look, you can cook for your wife. You can be as emotional, as sensitive, or as soft as a woman is. So you have both the qualities. How can she do that? And how can she inculcate these values in her children from a very young age?
I think it's very important to have role models. And in former times in India, probably more than anywhere else in the world, people would sit together, read from the Mahabharata, read from the Ramayana in the evening, all sitting family together. Nowadays, it's hard to catch the whole family to be in one room together, right? Or if they are in one room, they're all on their own separate phones watching something else, right? But these role models are very important. You know, I was thinking of Sita Devi. There's a beautiful story that when Sita Devi was in the Ashok Van and Ravana was trying to torment her and beg her, coerce her to be his wife, she put just a simple blade of grass between him and her, and just meant to show that whatever you're offering me, whatever wealth, whatever opulence, whatever jewels or gorgeous dresses, whatever you're offering me is insignificant as a blade of grass, because I belong to Ram. So her values and her love for Ram. So I think this is very, very important to inculcate in our children. You know, these values and role models, to be role models ourselves. Another story about Sita Devi I don't want to forget was when Hanuman came, and he was up in the tree and he was telling her, I can kill all these Rakshasis who are tormenting you. And Sita Devi said, no, Hanuman, we're guests in their kingdom, and they're only serving their king as best they know how. So no, don't kill them. So such extraordinary compassion. So where do we learn this? We learn this from our parents, from role models that have come before us. And I think this is really what's lacking in the world today. But I think also the courage. I mean, Sita Devi was speaking truth to power. Ravana was holding all the power, and she had the courage to speak truth to power. So someone might say, well, these are great goddesses. How can we compare? How can we live up to the standards? But there are examples, even in our day today. I would suggest find extraordinary biographies for your sons and daughters to read of great people who've changed the world in different ways. These are extraordinary examples. You know, there's one story I have to tell you of an ordinary housewife who was living in Delhi, and her husband was abusive to her. She had no respect in the family. Her name was Kalavati. She's no longer living, but she was just an ordinary Delhi housewife. And she used to cook for the family. I heard this story from her dear niece, and I love this story. She used to cook for the family, but she would always cook extra. And she would take the extra. She was a devotee of Krishna, so whatever she cooked, she would offer to Krishna. She would take the extra prasad, and out the back door of her house, she would feed the beggars and feed the poor people every day. And no one in her family knew anything about that, but she did it every day. And then she got cancer, and she passed away, and they had this memorial service for her. And at this memorial, there were all these strange people, all these beggar sorts of riffraff people. And the family was looking at them, and they were saying, who are these people? What are they doing here? And these people came forward and they said, Mataji used to feed us every day. None of you knew, but she used to feed us every day. And the other part of the story that I forgot to tell was that when she was dying, she had cancer. And when she was dying, she was saying to the family that was there with her, she was saying, I see it. I see Krishna's chariot coming for me. She was actually seeing the chariot of Krishna coming down to deliver her as she was on her deathbed. So these are extraordinary people, but also real people in our world, not only in the past, but today also. As far as our boys, I sent you that something that I saw online, the story of two runners. They were in a race. This happened just recently. It came through my WhatsApp. So there was a runner from Kenya, and he was out ahead of the others, but he got a little confused. He wasn't sure if there was one more round around the track. And so he was looking at his watch, but he was just about to cross the finish line. So this young man who was behind him, who was from Spain, he pushed that other man forward in front of him so that he could win. And afterwards, he was being interviewed by a journalist, and the journalist was saying, why did you do that? You could have won. Why did you push him forward? That was your chance. And the young man from Spain, he said, no, what would my mother have said? What would I have said to my mother if I've done that? He was the winner. He was meant to win. So this is character. And this is what we're looking for in our world today, these moments of great examples of character. These are the acharyas. These are the points of life in our world for the boys and the girls. So I think this is really, really important.
So Rukmini, it's very evident that compassion and courage, they go hand in hand.
Yes.
And without one of them, the other would be rendered of no use. And generally, when we are in a materialistic world, the material world is overpowering us. We tend to forget the softer aspects, the saner aspects of our life, like spirituality, like compassion, being kind to others, bringing about harmony. We just don't care for them. And it seems to be extremely difficult to balance, bring about a balance. So when you are with your husband, leading that dialogue, interfaith dialogue, do you come across situations where people stand their ground, they're adamant, and what does it take to bring about that harmony, to bring about a kind of consensus?
Thank you. That's a beautiful question. Our dialogue is based on mutual respect and honoring the differences, honoring what we share, but also honoring the differences. So it's a dialogue between practitioners, but also practitioners who are scholars in their tradition. So they're very learned people. The way our dialogues work is that someone presents a paper from the Vaishnav side, and then someone presents a paper from the Christian side or the Muslim side based on a certain topic that we choose ahead of time. This year, actually, I wrote the paper. The topic was love in union, love in separation. I can share that with you if you'd like. That was a high topic. But there have been very many beautiful instances. For example, once in our dialogue, and this happened at our Vaishnava Christian dialogue in India. So one of the Christians at this time, this was a few years ago, one of the Christians said, you know, we Christians, we talk a lot about love of God, but you Vaishnavas, you have so many details about rasa and all of these, how to love God. So we have so much to learn from you. And then one of the Vaishnavas said something very interesting. He responded by saying, you know, we Vaishnavas, it's true, we have a lot of details and theology about love of God, but we have to learn from you Christians how to love our brother man. That's what we have to learn from you, how to uplift all people from all classes as God's beloved children. So that was a particularly beautiful exchange. Thank you for asking that question.
Beautiful, because this world is torn by strife, and the kind of news that we hear, what the visuals that we see, and especially in our part of the world, they are very disturbing, very intimidating. And when I talk to people who are dealing with mental health, they say that stop watching news. And it's so dangerous, Rukmini, because news, channels, films, they are such potent tools to bring about harmony, such potent tools to send a message across that the feminine and the masculine energy needs to be together in perfect balance. But this is what they are not doing at all.
Yes.
What is your experience in your part of the world?
Well, it's certainly this, we have the same kind of craziness going on here as I'm sure you well know. And the different political parties are at war and deprecating each other's positions. And it's a terrible thing, but I think we all have too much of a steady diet of all of this news. And maybe we watch so much news, especially when we're watching it, it's even more because then it's attacking us visually and through our ears and in all ways, to maybe, and then we say, oh, well, I don't really have time to read Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam because why? We haven't put those big pieces in our day, first of all. So I think, sometimes we talk about reducing our weight. We should reduce our weight of that consumption of this mundane news, which is coming in, and especially when it's visual. I think we should not be oblivious to what's happening in the world, but we should really, really reduce our consumption of that media because it's so detrimental. And we should also demand from the journalists in our countries, show us some uplifting news. Give us stories of great examples and role models. That's what we want for our children, not all of this violence and chaos and craziness, which is there. I mean, I think on the bhakti path, it's very important to understand that we should have a healthy pessimism about this world, but also a healthy optimism about what's coming to us spiritually from the eternal realm. So this is not our eternal place. These different political issues that come across our plate, that come through our lives, these things are temporary. And we are eternal beings having a journey through this world. We are souls on a temporal journey. One great Sufi teacher gave an example that this world is like a guest house. Meet each guest with a smile each day, whether it's a depression or an anger or a who knows what. Meet each guest that comes in our day gratefully, with gratitude and with compassion. So this is a bhakti optimism because my vision is fixed on the pole star of the instructions of my guru and Lord Gauranga, Lord Shri Krishna. My vision is not fixed in the muddy puddles of this world, or just like the lotus. We hear about the lotus. So this is Navratri, right? All these goddesses, they're either holding a lotus or they're sitting on a lotus. So what is this important image of a lotus? The lotus comes from the mud. It's born out of the mud and the muck, and it grows to be the pinnacle of all beauty. So I think this is a very important example for us. We're all coming from the muck. Our lives are full of so many problems, so many arguments. We have anxieties about our husband, about our children, about the world. But to be like a lotus, to not be, the drop of water falls off the lotus, right? So to not be encumbered by the temporary waves that come through this world, but to have our eyes and our vision and our goals fixed on a higher world, we're meant for a higher life, right? We come from a higher place. We're all part and parcel of the Supreme Lord Krishna. And we're meant for a higher love. We're meant for a higher life. So we have to have our vision fixed like that.
So when you're talking about a higher life, it's evident that without a balance and equilibrium between the two kinds of energies, or a balance and an equilibrium even in the outer world, it's not possible to achieve those goals in life. And when I was going through your resume, I came across this that you're a member of the Board of Trustees of the Bhakti Vedanta College, Belgium.
Yeah.
So we've moved from parenting to satsang to films and media as a potent tool to bring about this kind of harmony between the two energies. What would you say about education at the school level and at the level of the college?
Education is so, so important. And there really needs to be a value-based education. We need to demand that of the colleges and the high schools. I know there was a beautiful initiative in Delhi. They had, what did they call it? A Gita Values Olympiad. A very dear friend of mine, Suruchi Mittar, and her friends at the Punjabi Bagh ISKCON temple created what they called a Gita Values Olympiad. And they challenged the students in the elementary schools, and they had participation of many, many schools. Even some Christian schools were also involved. So across Delhi, I think, let's see, the first time they did it, they had maybe 32 schools involved. And then I think this year they doubled it. And they gave prizes to the children that they would like, a bicycle and a computer and all these wonderful, attractive prizes for studying Bhagavad Gita. And then they interviewed the students. I was there at their first, inauguration. And the students were so charming. They said, I thought this would be so boring to study Bhagavad Gita. But when I got into it, I really found it to be very, very interesting and very centering. So these values, we're talking about balance. We're talking about having a foundation of values. So having this foundation is so, so important. Many of us have built our own homes. And when our friends come and visit our homes, we think, what a lovely home, lovely paintings, lovely curtains, lovely couch and decorations. But no one says, I really admire your foundation. Just like you were saying about the salt. Nobody says, the salt in this dish is very perfect or very delicious. It's unseen, it's the foundation. So in that way, these values are the foundation on which we can build our lives. We hear Srila Prabhupada built a house in which the whole world can live. So what was the foundation of that house that he gave us? Let me tell you a story about Srila Prabhupada. Once in Vrindavan, someone asked him, when he was becoming very, very famous, he'd come back to India after being in the West, and someone asked him, are you the guru for the whole world? And he just put his head down and he said, I am nobody's guru. I am just everyone's servant. So this is the foundation, this humility, this compassion. Why did he even come to the West? Why did he come back to India after, if you read the journey, Lifetime in Preparation, the first volume of Prabhupada's biography. And I really highly recommend everyone to read this Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. It's not as widely read as it should be. And if you're hoping to inculcate values in yourself, your husband, your son, your daughter, please ask them to read this story. The first volume, when you read it, it's called A Lifetime in Preparation. You could say it's a story of failure. Everything Prabhupada tried to do in India was a more or less failure. Sometimes it would look like he would have a little bit of success, and then that would also fail. So failure after failure after failure. So failure is, character is built on success. is built on having so many failures, but having the determination that with my strong desire and with the grace of God, that I will be successful. And that success is not a material thing either, because we look at Hanuman, who could throw immense boulders into the ocean, and the tiny spider, who was also doing his best. So success is based on our sincere desire to try our very best. And, one American president said, comparison is the thief of joy, which I think is very, very wise. Sometimes we compare ourselves, oh, my brother is so much better than I am at this or that or the other thing. But no, to know that I have my unique gifts. Every daughter, every son should be taught, you have your unique gifts given by God. And what you do with them, how you develop them, will be your gift back to God, your gift to the world. And that's not to be compared with anyone else. Whether you're a boy or a girl, you can give something wonderful to the world based on values of compassion and care and an inspiration of seeing all living beings as connected to Lord Krishna, that they deserve our love, whatever talents you have.
Yes. And Rukmini, you talked about scriptures and the beautiful stories. And you talked about your experiences with your guru and his words of wisdom, his nectarian words. But this generation, in fact, every generation, is torn by this gap, this divide between what they consider as modern and what they consider as tradition or out of date, out of sync with the modern times. Mm-hmm. And then crops up this idea of very strong feminism or some kind of chauvinism from either the male or the female. And then there's this conflict of energies. How does one bring about, other than, we talk about the scriptures, all right, we will read the scriptures, but what about this generation divide, this gap? What would you say to the feminists, or what would you say to the chauvinists who are, just trying to prove a point?
Mm-hmm. Yes, so there's an imbalance of values, and there are always extremes on both sides, right? But like a pendulum swing, to come to that center point and to be emphasizing the importance of intrinsic values and not the strident or extreme voices. Srila Prabhupada had traditional values for people in society, for women also, but he also valued each one of our unique contributions. So I think it's very important when we look at our children to see what will inspire their hearts. Okay, so there are these strident voices on both sides, chauvinism, feminism, be extreme, be crazy. But then, you look at what some of the greatest minds and hearts have done in the world. And I keep thinking, when you asked me that question, the first thing I thought of was the Govardhan Eco Village. I have to say, this is cutting edge science, cutting edge help to the earth, engaging the finest minds. IIT, big brains from IIT are taxing their brains to find solutions to the problems of the earth. They're taking plastic bottles and turning it into petrol to motivate vehicles. They're, in so many ways, they're taking the most contaminated water and turning it into water to grow edible vegetables and fruits. So this is a brilliant use of modern technology combined with ancient values. So I think this is very, very important, and to look very closely and not be comparing, but to look very closely at ourselves, but also at our children. Oh, this little girl likes to dance. Okay, let her learn values through dance, okay? Maybe she also is very, very talented in mathematics. Don't tell her that because you're a girl, you can't do mathematics. This is a stereotype that needs to be put aside. You know, some of the greatest scientists in history have also been women, Madame Curie and others, you know. So look at the abilities that we have in our hearts. What do you love to do? What brings you joy? And what can you do in service to the world? And use those abilities to fan the flame and do it as an offering to Krishna. Use my abilities and offer them to Krishna. And then he partners with us. We become co-creators of value in this world. There's a beautiful saying that, you know, because bhakti is not an ascending process. It's not to storm the gates of heaven like Ravana tried to do. We'll build a staircase to heaven and we'll storm up there and throw out all those devatas. No, bhakti is a descending process. And I love this verse from Shakespeare, where he says, the quality of mercy is not strained, the gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath, right? It is twice blessed. It blesses him that gives and him that takes. So beautiful, you know, and this is bhakti, right? The quality of mercy, even if someone, Shakespeare says, even if someone is a king, that quality of mercy is more beautiful than his harsh judgment. It's more beautiful than his crown, his jeweled crown, right? So this is what we have to inculcate. And it comes by association, it comes by hearing, it comes by being with like-minded people who can uplift us in the world through our own personal sadhana before we charge out in the day. And, you know, sit with your kids, do it as a family, you know, do some sadhana before starting the day, sadhu sangha, and then say, well, what can I do for the world? How can we distribute some prasadam to unfortunate people? Right now during COVID, so many people are suffering. How can we work to alleviate their suffering with Krishna prasadam? Or how can we care for them? Or how can we minimize our own greed, Ishopanishad says, to take not more than what's required. And with whatever is extra, share it with people who are suffering. And what happens is this creates joy in ourselves and in the world, and in the giver and the receiver, as Shakespeare said. So, you know, I wanted to share one other story that's really beautiful. There was a woman, her father was a great Sufi teacher, and they were living in Paris. And she was a very, very simple, gentle soul. She used to write children's books. I think she was the author of the Jataka tales, which I think most of our children have read. So she became very, very disturbed with the fascism. She was living during World War II. She became very, very disturbed with the rise of fascism. And she became a secret agent of the French underground. And she, because she believed very, very much in that we should be compassionate to others. So eventually what happened was some neighbor perhaps turned her in, and she was put in a concentration camp by the Nazis. And when they were coming to kill her, she was very courageous. Her name was Noor Inayat Khan. You can look her up, Noor Inayat Khan. And they were coming to kill her. She said, "You cannot kill me because I am the soul. You can never destroy me because I am a spiritual being, and nothing you can ever do to me could ever destroy me." She had so much courage in the face of these torturers, really. And there's actually a statue of Noor Inayat Khan outside at the front of Dachau, the concentration camp. So these personalities are there. So I think we have to investigate, research, find these role models for ourselves, for our children, to be inspired in this time of so much fear, such a lack of hope. Find hope in these role models. Find characters who can inspire them in their own communities, in the world, you know?
Yes, Rukmini. And you know, I'm a student of literature, and believe me, it's for the first time that I've heard somebody give a spiritual connotation to what Shakespeare said in The Merchant of Venice. And Portia saying that dialogue. So for most of us, it was beautiful words, a beautiful message. But to look at it spiritually and to understand it that way, that's been a unique experience for me. Thank you so much, Rukmini, for that. And as it goes, all beautiful things must come to an end. I've seen anecdotes after anecdotes, inspiring stories, and talking about role models and scriptures. Um, I would love to, go on and on with you because people would love to hear you. And these are the tales we are waiting for. These are the stories. These are the words we are looking for. And as if a healing balm to the troubles that surround us, to the hurt and the diseased body. And I'm really thankful to you for that. But before we say bye and say, yeah, we've had a good conversation, what would be your message for the young men and women across the world?
Yes.
And how they can be agents to bring about this equilibrium between.
Yes. How can we be agents of change? How can we be agents of upliftment to the world? How can we be points of light? How can we be pole stars in this world? And I was thinking, during Navratri, we have the picture of the goddess Durga. She has so many weapons, right? So we have to decide, I think within each of us, which face of the goddess do we wish to see, right? We can see her blessing hand if we live in virtue, live in compassion, live in goodness, live without greed, without fault finding and gossiping. We can see her blessing hand, right? Or we can choose to see her face where she's ready to wield her weapons at us because of our greed or because of our anger or because of all of these qualities that we really want to dispatch. We don't want to be like that. So she's there to correct us. She's there to create balance in the world, right? And sometimes, what is it said? We can use Shastra or we can use Shastra, right? The weapons can be there to assault us, or we can hear from the holy books and be uplifted. So this is our choice. Love is never forced, right? Krishna says at the end of the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, now you've heard everything. Now do whatever you wish to do. It's your choice, because love, by definition, can never be forced. So how can I uplift myself, my children, my family, and all those people I meet by choosing love, by choosing the blessing hand of the beautiful, benign, smiling goddess, not the angry face with the weapons.
So beautifully said, Rukmini. And what do I say now? Except that you are so beautiful within and without. And such a glowing example of how the beauty within can just shine through you, your persona. I wish many young men and women of India hear this conversation and are able to find a role model right here. I hope they understand what you've said. I wish Sadachar, Satsang, and Swadhyay would be their guiding lights. They would make the right choices, as you said, Shastra or Shastra, or a combination of both. I'm thinking of a very practical example. If I pick up a piece of paper and I wish to make it into two, I'll have to tear it apart. Anything that has to be split has to be torn apart. We are not looking at splitting up. We are not looking at strife. We are not looking at tearing away. We are looking at love. We are looking at wisdom. We are looking at scriptures and role models to bring about a harmony between two apparently different energies, but they aren't different, are they? Because the source is the same.
Yes, I love what you're saying, and I'm reminded of a quote from the poet Virgil. You like these international quotes.
Yeah.
But the poet Virgil said, love conquers all, so therefore we too should be conquered by love. So love is the greatest force in the world. What are we all looking for in our hearts? We're looking to love and to be loved for who we really are, without the games, without the false masks. And I think this is what's being given in the path of bhakti. I call the path of bhakti the yoga of gratitude, to be aware of the gifts we've received and to express our gratitude to Lord Krishna, to our moms, to our dads, to our siblings, to our kids. You know, I love this one quote from Khalil Gibran where he says, because we're talking about kids, he says, "Your children are arrows sent forth from your bow. You may strive to be like them, but do not strive to make them like you." So we shouldn't, as moms, we shouldn't be trying to force a square peg into a round hole and force our children to become like us, or to fulfill our vicarious ambitions through our children. Oh, I want him to be a doctor. I want him to be an engineer. What does he want to do? What are his gifts to the world? And I also wanted to say that sometimes we find role models in our very own lives, among the very smallest people, the most humble people. At one time, my husband and I had a business in a local airport, and there was a cleaning lady who was so wise. She was a Christian lady. And when you would ask her, "How are you today?" she would say, "I am blessed. Today I am blessed." And it was so funny because the big executives who were making the, six-figure incomes were coming to her for personal advice. What should I do? I'm having marital problems. And she would give them advice, this simple cleaning lady. So sometimes those role models are right before our eyes and we don't even notice them. So I think that's also important to see.
Thank you so much, Rukmini. And I'm already looking forward to another conversation with you. And we'll get in touch with you, we'll speak with you. I'm so glad that Krishna has connected me to you through this medium, through this internet, through Zoom. And I found a guide, I found a friend, and it's been a very, very emotional and a personal experience for me. Thank you so much for being there. And yes, please think of another topic, another conversation, so that we're together again. And Pavitra, Team Pavitra thanks you from the bottom of their hearts for giving us your valuable time and for your words of wisdom, your pearls of wisdom, and the nectar of bhakti.
Thank you so much. Yeah. It's my great honor to serve in any way and to serve the beautiful Pavitra community. So thank you.
And now we can see how love, spirituality, scriptures, and bhakti, they all can come together to show us how to bring about an equilibrium, a balance between the masculine and feminine energies. And not only that, an equilibrium in this whole existence, this whole world where we are living. And amidst these challenging times, your words provided a ray of hope. I'm so thankful to you. Thank you so much.
So much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Team Pavitra, for this wonderful opportunity to listen to Rukmini Walker. Thank you, audience of Pavitra. We are always there for you. Thank you so much for standing by us and for encouraging us. Thank you once again. And see you again, Rukmini.
Thank you, my honor. Thank you very much.